Hello, hello, and welcome to what I assume is the final video of this series, where we are watching and reacting to the Second Punic War by Oversimplified. Basically, Rome, with Scipio the Younger, just took New Carthage in a very embarrassing turn of events in just one day by backdooring them, essentially. And now we're gonna see what's gonna happen next when the Carthaginian armies are gonna notice that and get there and see that they kinda done fucked up. So let's see where things are going.
Wow, Skippy, you're amazing.
Don't call me that. How'd you know the lagoon would get shallow?
It's almost like you speak to the gods.
No. I told him. All the local farmers know about the
Yes, that's it. I speak to the gods.
Totally. Very believable.
Scipio had no problem allowing his men to think he was divinely inspired. Roman writers also
I'm sure that
tell
helps
us
with
another
morale.
of Scipio's traits. He was apparently quite merciful in victory and often protected the inhabitants of captured cities.
Spencer!
What are you doing? Well, I was just about to murder this family.
Hey, bad Spencer! No!
Yeah,
Can I
bad
at
Spencer,
least
don't
kill
do
the
that.
dad?
No, no, stop
What
that.
about
No!
Put
Oh,
that sword
you're
away.
mean.
Go
The
home.
Carthaginian generals in the region must have been shocked at the loss of their capital city. There was now a Terminator in Spain, and he was coming. In 208 BC, he made a move on Hasdrubal, hoping to defeat him before the other Carthaginian armies could come and link up. When Hasdrubal heard Scipio was coming, he said,
He ran away.
Hasdrubal
Yes.
did the sensible thing and climbed a big hill for safety. Hey, get down here. I want to kill you.
Fat chance, Vin Diesel!
Well, he doesn't have to be rude. So what's the plan then, Scipio? This time, we march straight up and at him. Right? Right, Scipio?
No.
Billy? No. Scipio once again displayed a distinctly not Roman approach to fighting, when instead of marching straight up and at him, Scipio feigned a frontal skirmish, only to pull off a surprise uphill envelopment. Not an easy thing to do, but Scipio
Okay.
had trained his army to pull off
Smart
maneuvers that typical Roman armies couldn't. After the battle, the defeated Hasdrubal fled Spain, hoping to link up with his brother Hannibal in Italy. And Hannibal, desperate,
How does he do that?
needed the help.
Is he also
As
just going through the
Scipio was
Alps?
dominating in Spain, Hannibal's struggles in southern Italy continued. He was convinced that if he just received ample supplies and reinforcements, he could reverse his fortunes and get back to kicking Rome's ass. But for the remainder of the war, he would suffer a frustrating lack of support from the Carthaginian Senate. After Cannae, Hannibal had sent his brother Mago to Carthage, where he famously poured out golden rings taken from fallen Roman knights. He told the Senate that with reinforcements, Hannibal could finish the job. But a growing faction in the Senate, possibly jealous of Hannibal's rising influence, opposed sending any help. In the end, a large number of the reinforcements gathered for Hannibal now ended up being diverted to stop Scipio in Spain. Just as he had hoped, Scipio's campaign in Spain was actively harming Hannibal in Italy. However, those reinforcements meant that when Scipio made a move on the remaining Carthaginian armies in Spain, they now likely outnumbered him. With the odds heavily stacked against him, it would take some serious skill to win this battle.
Yeah, but they don't
This
have a
time we're gonna
Hannibal,
march
so
straight
if
at them,
you
right?
No,
tactician
Billy.
it right.
The preceding battle
Whoops.
of
Sorry.
Alita is often considered Scipio's masterpiece because it was positively oozing with deception and trickery. First, both sides spent several days forming up and facing off without actually fighting. On each day, Scipio placed his strongest Roman legions in the center with his weaker Iberian allies on the sides. Seeing this, the Carthaginians were like, "This guy's an idiot. We've seen his plan. His strongest troops
And
are
then they're
going
just
to be
gonna
in the
switch the
center,
armor,
so
and the
let's
strong
form all
ones
our
are
battle
on the
plans
outside."
Based on this information, I'm sure he won't change anything at the last minute. Then, when the day of battle came, Scipio woke up the Carthaginians with an early morning attack, causing them to rush out of camp without breakfast. When the Carthaginians lined up with their strongest troops in the center to meet Scipio's, they were stunned to find that Scipio had completely reversed his order. The weaker
Damn.
Carthaginian sides
Who could have
now
seen that
found
coming?
Scipio's strongest bearing down on them. Then, In an extremely impressive maneuver, the well-trained Roman wings even stretched out during their approach, hitting the Carthaginians from the sides. The Carthaginian center could have turned to help, but Scipio had ordered his center to approach so slowly that Carthage's center could do nothing but just stand and wait. In this way, the outnumbered Scipio had cleverly controlled events so that the bulk of the strongest Carthaginian troops couldn't even fight during the battle. He had
that's a pretty
completely
good
removed
strategy.
them from the equation. The incredible Scipio had inflicted a monumental defeat on a much larger enemy force. And the Battle of Ilipa was the final
Everyone
nail
killed
in
the guy.
coffin for Carthaginian Spain. Yet more tribespeople continued to side with the Romans, and the remaining Carthaginians retreated to the coast and eventually fled the peninsula. And would you look at that? In just a few years, the incredible young Scipio had turned Spain completely red. The Carthaginians must have been stunned.
Yeah, now they
His
can be
Spanish
scared again.
campaign had almost been as impressive as Hannibal's campaign in Italy. In fact, see if any of this sounds familiar. In Spain, Scipio had used the environment of the battlefield to his advantage. He staged ambushes by concealed troops. He treated local tribespeople well, earning their friendship. He even once forced his enemy to come out and fight him without breakfast. Each and every one of these
That sounds
tactics
very familiar,
were
yeah.
possibly borrowed from a certain one-eyed general. In all the battles Scipio had fought against Hannibal, it seemed he may have been taking notes.
Hey! Scipio!
What?
Stop stealing my tactics! I'm 700 miles away! I can't hear you! What did you say?
What?
What?
Better yet,
Wow,
Scipio's
good talk.
achievement in taking a well-fortified city, plus his understanding of the overall strategy, has led some
He's
historians
above
to
him
argue
now,
he wasn't
definitely.
just as good as Hannibal. Scipio may actually have been better. This young man, who many in Rome had doubted, had just shut those silly billies right the flip up. Mere years ago, it looked like Rome had no chance of even surviving this war. But now, the momentum of war was shifting astonishingly fast. And for Hannibal in Italy, things continued to head south. Before Scipio had even gone to Spain, the Romans had placed Capua, Hannibal's largest city in Italy, under a dangerous siege. And in order to rescue it, Hannibal needed to take drastic action. Fast. Man, everything's
needs
falling
guys.
apart. Fine, I'll do it. Do what? Yeah, you've convinced me. I'll march on Rome. Hannibal, that conversation was 5 years ago.
Isn't that a
It's
little
too
late now?
No one's trying to convince you to march on Rome.
I said
Yeah.
I'll do it! Quit
That's what I
nagging me.
meant.
Ugh!
Hannibal finally marched
now it's
on
just
Rome,
stupid.
hoping it might draw the Romans away from Capua. The Romans saw Hannibal approaching their city, and they freaked the hell out. Hannibal is said to have closely approached the city walls, inspecting the defenses, as the Romans
just
inside
shoot him?
quivered in their togas. However, Hannibal probably knew he had no chance of taking the city. The whole thing was a feint, and Hannibal soon left. The Romans
Wow.
famously coined the phrase, Hannibal is at the gates, to describe a moment of crisis or severe desperation. But for accuracy's sake, the phrase should probably be, Hannibal is at the gates. But don't worry, it's just a feint to draw the Romans away from Capua. And it didn't even work, because the Romans stayed
Wow.
at Capua, and the Capuans misunderstood and thought Hannibal had abandoned them. And so, they surrendered the city.
Yeah, this
But
backfired a
apparently
little bit.
that's not as catchy. Despite a few successes, including an ambush in 208 BC, where Hannibal managed to kill both consuls in one go, Hannibal
Wow.
was slowly but steadily losing his grip on southern Italy. Even Hasdrubal, who had fled Spain to join Hannibal, never reached his brother.
he
made
really
his own
went
dramatic
through
crossing
the
of
Alps.
just as Hannibal had done. But unlike Hannibal, the second Hasdrubal arrived in Italy, he was immediately pulverized.
He made it
The
too?
Romans then took his head and
It really
threw
doesn't
over the
seem
walls
special.
into his brother's camp. Hannibal was becoming extremely isolated. After his impressive conquest of Spain, Scipio returned to Rome a hero. And when the election came for next year's consuls, despite not meeting the typical requirements, Scipio
They
won
just
in a
elected him.
landslide. But the question now was, what would he do next? All right, what's your plan then, Scipio? You're gonna go fight Hannibal now, right? Get this, Fabius.
No.
No. Scipio's plan remained the same as before. Don't attack the monster directly. Attack his base of support, which now happened to be Carthage itself.
Is he just
That's
gonna
right,
go take Carthage?
Scipio would invade Africa. However, Scipio understood that any invasion of Africa would stand a much better chance if he could secure an alliance with one of the African tribes. Throughout the war, Carthage's far superior Numidian cavalry, which came from this part of Africa, had played a critical role in winning battles. Numidia was divided between two rival kings. In the east, the king Syphax had sympathized with Rome for much of the war, and so at some point, Scipio visited Syphax to ratify a treaty. It just so happened, however, that the Carthaginian general Hasdrubal Gisco, whom Scipio had fought in Spain, also arrived at the exact same time. And so Syphax invited both Scipio and Gisco for a meal. The two men fought for Syphax's alliance, and by Roman accounts, Scipio was positively charming. Come on, Syphax, stick with us Romans. We'll build a naked statue of you. Very enticing. If you join our side, Syphax, we'll give you a 2% discount on figs. You like figs, don't you? Not really.
That's
hey,
not enticing.
Check this out. Wow! Hey, Syphax, check this out.
No.
Did he just defecate? I believe he did.
Wow.
Well, Scipio, you clearly are the most charming man in the Mediterranean. My alliance is... Syphax, I'll let you marry my extremely hot daughter.
Oof.
Yours! Humana, humana! Unable to compete with Syphax's libido, Scipio instead made contact with Syphax's rival, the other Numidian king, Massinissa, who was a longtime ally of Carthage. Scipio told Massinissa, if you join the Romans, I'll help you defeat Syphax and become the ultimate Numidian king.
That's very enticing.
And so
as well.
was now on Team Rome. Good job, Skippy. With a Numidian alliance solidified, Scipio prepared for his invasion of Africa. He raised a volunteer force that included many of the disgraced survivors from Cannae, and he set sail. Well, Terry, any news from Italy? Has Hannibal won the war yet?
Doesn't seem like it.
Here's Skippy!
The Roman landing sent a clear message to the Carthaginians. You don't invade us. No, we invade you. For the first time in the war, the Carthaginian homeland was under threat, and the Carthaginians needed to defeat Scipio at all costs. They gathered a huge army led by Hasdrubal Gisco with allied Numidians led by Syphax, and they ordered them to get Scipio the hell off their continent. Sources say at this point, Scipio was severely outnumbered. Scipio? That army's huge! There's no way we can beat off all these men! How are we gonna beat off all these men? Vigorously! And while maintaining eye contact. As always, Scipio had a plan to deal with the larger enemy force. It just so happened that Syphax was offering to try and broker peace between the Romans and the Carthaginians. And Scipio smelled an opportunity. He sent a Roman envoy to Syphax's camp. And when they got there, Syphax was like, hey guys, welcome to the enemy camp. Just before we begin negotiations, a small safety demonstration.
And then they killed him.
Our huts are made of grass and reeds. Very flammable. If there was even a single spark, this whole place would become a raging inferno. And all my men would burn alive.
Yeah, they definitely killed him.
The Roman troops then reported back to Scipio about the Numidian camp, its construction, and most importantly, its flammability. Then, the following night, as the sun was setting over the beautiful African plains, and the Carthaginians were all comfy in their beds, they began to gently dream of Carthaginian figs and child sacrifice. Good night, Carthaginians. Good night, Syphax and Gisco.
Good night.
Good evening.
Good evening, fire.
In the night, shadowy Roman figures approached the Numidian camp. As the Numidians lay in their beds, Scipio executed his plan. The camp erupted into flames. With the flammable wooden huts, the fires spread terrifyingly fast. Men were burned in their beds. Those who awoke in a panic, believing the fire to have been some kind of terrible accident, rushed to the exits without their weapons and armor. Those who saw the fire from the Carthaginian camp also rushed out unarmed. And when they got there he was. Scipio, the Romans, and their steel.
I gotta say it's a little bit mean, but you know, it's war. Gotta see how you do the best. And that is a pretty good tactic.
The terrified Carthaginians were massacred, and with heavy casualties, Hasdrubal and Syphax fled the scene of the disaster. Scipio followed this incredible success with another victory against the pair at the Battle of the Great Plains. After that, Massinissa chased his rival Syphax into his kingdom, where Syphax was captured. Massinissa was now the ultimate Numidian
I mean, he
king.
kind of seems
He
like,
entered
looks
Syphax's
like a
capital
tyrant,
city.
not
He seized
very
Syphax's
good.
palace. He even married Syphax's wife.
Wow.
And when Scipio got mad at him for marrying a Carthaginian girl, he then poisoned his wife.
Wow.
Boys will be boys. Having defeated the Carthaginian armies in Africa, almost nothing now stood between Scipio and Carthage. And the Carthaginians were freaking out. What do we do? What do we do? There's only one thing
Call
left
in
to
Hannibal to come
do.
back.
Recall him.
Oh, they really are.
Well, Hannibal, you've been here in Italy for 16 years. This is practically your home. You're basically Italian. Yes, Gerald. And I've had such a lovely time.
Mamma
I ate
mia.
spaghetti, did this with my hands. I've committed my whole life to this campaign. And once Rome has fallen, it'll all have been worth it.
Hannibal, you have to return to Carthage. Your Italian campaign has been for nothing. Your whole life has been a waste.
Oh wow. Very reassuring.
Imagine being Hannibal in this moment.
poor man.
You left Carthage when you were 9. You probably barely even recognize your own homeland. The kingdom he had built in Spain with his father? Gone. And now his Italian campaign, his vengeance. Was it really all for nothing? But that was that. Carthage was under threat, and Hannibal had to protect his home city. As he left Italy, in Rome, there was celebration, but also some trepidation. Now, Scipio would have to face Hannibal in Africa, where Hannibal would have home advantage. While Hannibal was on his way,
Oh, I'm pretty sure
the
you got that.
Carthaginians stalled for time and approached Scipio for peace talks. Hey, look, we never meant to start an all-out 2-decade-long war, but you did. No, that was Hannibal. He's to blame for all of this. Well, all right then.
I mean, kinda,
Sign this
yeah.
peace treaty. Okay, let me just get my signature right on there.
He's here. Yes.
Damn.
Oh, look who's here, you bald prick.
You're so dead now, Skippy.
And then he killed him.
Don't.
Call me that.
After Carthage proposed peace,
Okay, he kinda
only
looked
to
like
then
he's
go
gonna
back
fire
up,
off a
the
Kamehameha.
merciful Scipio was enraged. He began refusing to accept town surrender, and instead began burning everything to the ground, selling everyone into slavery.
Hannibal, he's burning our town.
Maybe chill.
Go stop him.
I mean,
Guys,
your
he's obviously
calm
trying to lure me out there
temper
to fight on those flat plains, where
kinda
his Numidian
made you
cavalry will
win.
give him the advantage. It's a trick. Well, it's working. Go and fight him. It's obviously a trap, and we're falling for it. Go and fight him. Hannibal set out to meet Scipio in the western plains. And here came Scipio's final test. Finally, the teacher would face the student. The two greatest generals of all time in one last, decisive battle. Would Hannibal's genius still shine through? Or would Scipio prove that he had surpassed the
Who
master?
knows?
Before battle, the two great generals rode out from their camps and met in person for the first time. Hannibal, I'm a huge fan. I thought you'd have more hair, and I thought you'd have more eyes. Okay. They then had a conversation, which I'll paraphrase. Hannibal said, "At the start of this war, I had great fortune in Italy. But look at me now, a sad old man who, like other sad old men, failed to conquer Rome. Your fortune can change rapidly, Scipio. You should consider negotiating a peace rather than risking it all in one last fight against me." Very eloquently put.
Nah,
Scipio
I'd
then
risk it.
replied,
you! Negotiate? Negotiate what? I took Spain. I'm about to burn your pathetic city to the ground. What could you offer me in negotiations? I already
Hot
have
woman.
it all! Ah!
Seriously though, Hannibal, I am such a big fan. And so, it was settled. The two great generals would face off one last time in the epic Battle of Zama. Scipio gave his men,
gotta say, I've
consisting
never heard
many
of it
survivors
before.
from Cannae, a pre-battle speech, telling them not only would they gain redemption, but they could become masters of the world. Hannibal told his men probably nothing, because most of them didn't even speak the
I
same
was about to say,
language.
those people
As
look
the
like a
two armies
ragtag
lined up
bunch
for
of
battle,
nothing.
Something interesting became clear. Hannibal had more infantry and hoped to use them to brute strength the Romans. But Scipio had the nimble Numidian cavalry and hoped to pull off an envelopment. It was a complete role reversal of Cannae. As the battle began, Hannibal made his first move. He sent his 80 war elephants to smash through and weaken the Roman infantry. Scipio had the perfect response. He had altered his formation to create passages between the Roman maniples. His light troops stepped aside at the right moment, revealing the gaps ahead of the charging elephants. Elephants, if given the choice between a suicide charge into spears or a nice clean escape, will probably choose the escape.
Yeah, I'd do
And
the
that's
same.
what happened. Some elephants were so frightened from the noise that they even turned and smashed back into the Carthaginian cavalry, which the Roman cavalry
That's
then
sad.
engaged. Your move, Hannibal. Hannibal wasn't an idiot. He knew that he was fighting superior Numidian cavalry on open plains. So when his weaker cavalry ended up being routed from the battlefield, he probably wasn't surprised and hoped the Roman cavalry would be lured as far from the battlefield as possible, because his
But they
infantry
weren't,
needed
most
time
likely.
to do a clever little job. Hannibal had the numerical advantage, and he had positioned his army in 3 lines. The weaker troops were at the front, while his best men, the army that had been with him in Italy, were in the rear. As the Romans smashed into the weaker front lines, they managed to cut through them, but suffered losses and exhaustion in doing so. The same with Hannibal's second line, so that by the time the Romans reached Hannibal's superior third line, the two sides may have now been about equal in number.
Not to tie, but he has the better men.
exhausted Romans had just fought an entire battle to get there, while the remaining Carthaginians were fresh and ready to go. Hannibal was still a genius. And this is where the final race began. Could Hannibal's stronger infantry finish off the Romans before the Roman cavalry returned from their pursuit? Who would be quicker, the Carthaginian infantry or the Roman cavalry?
That's
The
a good
answer:
question.
the cavalry. They had called off their pursuit just in time to turn around and hit Hannibal from the rear. And that was the deciding move.
Yeah,
As
definitely.
the sandwiched Carthaginians were hacked to pieces, Hannibal knew he had lost, and he escaped the battlefield. It was a battle that some historians say was well fought on both sides. Both showed their genius, but fortune fell in the favor of Scipio. With just a few
Yeah, but I feel like Scipio definitely was the better one. Like, both did good, but Scipio's tactics were definitely better, especially like he just completely outmaneuvered the elephants, and then I mean his cavalry kind of had an easier job because their cavalry was A, weaker, and B, already also weakened by the elephants that charged through them. And I mean Hannibal's only hope was that like he had time before the cavalry came back, which was like that's a slim chance, you know. And the only good move Hannibal then made was to realign his army so his strong forces have more time to recover and to like relax and tire out until the Romans were tired out. So Scipio definitely, like, it was like a 80-20 for Scipio, definitely.
2,000 Roman casualties compared to 40,000 Carthaginians. Scipio had
Yeah, you-
won.
You can see it there
Hannibal
decisively.
advised the Carthaginian Senate that it was time to surrender. 17 years of war, finally over. The terms Rome placed on Carthage were harsh. They lost territory and were prohibited from starting any more wars with anyone without Rome's explicit permission. Carthage basically became a weak Roman client state.
Yeah, or a
And
vessel,
what of
definitely.
these two military geniuses? Well, Scipio returned to Rome triumphant. For his victory in Africa, he was given the title Scipio Africanus. He had delivered Rome from an existential threat, and so, from here on out, he was primed to dominate Roman politics. He was even offered to become consul for life, but he humbly refused.
What a nice
Politics
man.
being what it is, however, jealousy eventually grew. Scipio and his family ended up
Did he get
battling
assassinated?
accusations of corruption. And Scipio, possibly becoming tired of Roman politics, retired to a nice country house by the coast.
That's
Hannibal
nice.
also took a leading role in Carthaginian politics after the war. But again, due to jealousy, factionalism, and a possibility of arrest by the Romans, he eventually entered exile. He spent the remainder of his years out east, even advising enemies of Rome. Rome's hatred of Hannibal endured, and they never stopped hoping to someday capture the monster.
That's
One
also
story is
understandable.
told of how when a much older Hannibal was chilling in the city of Ephesus, a Roman delegation was sent to the city, and in that delegation was Scipio Africanus. The two men met for the second time, and they seemed to have gotten along quite well. Scipio asked Hannibal
That's nice,
who he
though.
thought the three greatest generals of all time were. Hannibal placed Alexander the Great in number 1, Pyrrhus of Epirus in number 2, and in third place, himself. Scipio then asked, "And what if you had defeated me at Zama?" "Well, Scipio, then I would have been the greatest general of all time. Please, call me Skippy."
Aw.
Eventually, around
I mean, it probably didn't went exactly like that, but that kind of shows that, you know, those were great men. Like, they, of course, kind of, you know, some hatred was, of course, there and stuff, but, you know, when you can just leave it be and step away, basically, you know, that's great. You know, shit happened, things were bad, but just, you know, leave it. You know, just make peace with it. It has been happened. You know, just give each other high fives, and you know it's okay.
183 BC, Hannibal, now in his 60s, came under threat of Roman capture. After a long life, he chose to take some poison. According to Livy, his last words: "Let us now relieve the Romans of the anxiety they have so long experienced, since they think it tries their patience too much to wait for an old man's death." Wow, Hannibal. What a dignified
He's
end.
already dead.
Gross. And there you have it.
Wow.
The Second Punic War. Finally done. It took 17 years to end the war. And on a personal note, making these videos has also taken 17 years off my life. Carthage began to recover from the war shockingly fast, however. And anxieties over Carthage
Will
would
there be a
remain
third
in
war?
Rome. In particular, one senator would begin calling for one last crusade against Carthage to end the threat once and for all. He famously began to end all of his speeches with one singular phrase, one of the most famous phrases in Roman history.
Carthago delenda est. Carthago must be. Carthage must be destroyed. Well then. The Third Punic War. Coming eventually to your houses. Well, hopefully. Coming eventually to your YouTube, not to your houses. That would be terrifying. But we're definitely gonna react to it. But yeah, that's definitely been an interesting video. And like I said in the end, you know, those were great men. Absolutely. And I kind of admire that. Like, you've faced each other in war, you've been enemies, but, you know, the war's over, and just leave it be. And, you know, you don't need to be friends, but treat each other as human beings. And that's kind of also my message to everyone out there, you know. We're all humans, so be kind, you know. Don't hate all the time. Just be nice. That's very important. But yeah, for now, that's been it for me. And I hope you liked this short kind of project from me reacting to this video series. And if you do, like, maybe subscribe. It helps me a lot. And, I heard there is an algorithm out there which would also appreciate if you comment and would expose me to a few more people. I mean, I'm just starting and I have no idea where this is gonna go, but so far it's been fun, and I hope so it was for you. I have to see what I do next, but maybe I'll just react to some more oversimplified videos. To be honest, I've seen them already, but it's been a while, so I probably can rewatch them and react to them, and we're gonna have some more fun together. But until then, I hope you have a great day, or a great evening, or whenever you watch this video, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.